sun hung low in the sky, painting the fields of Oak Hollow Farm in a warm golden glow. A sense of calm surrounded the homestead, as the gentle rustle of leaves mingled with the distant clucking of chickens. Yet, hidden beneath this serene exterior, a storm was brewing, one that would shift the course of a small community forever. It all began on a seemingly ordinary Friday evening. Toby, the farmer, knee-deep in chores, found solace in the rhythm of his work. After a long day in the fields, sweat glistening on his brow, he held a moment's peace, perched on the wooden fence that separated his lush green pastures from the dirt road. With firm hands, he wiped the grit off his brow and breathed in the earthy scent of freshly tilled soil. Life here was simple but fulfilling. But then, like a dark cloud drifting over the sun, the unmistakable roar of motorcycle engines shattered that tranquility. A sound that belonged to the motor gang, a group notorious for their thuggery and chaos, a gang that treated townsfolk like pawns in their reckless games. Toby's heart sank as the bikes roared closer, the clattering growl morphing into laughter, jeers, and the rhythmic pulse of music blaring from their speakers. He squinted down the dirt road, his gaze pinned on a cloud of dust rising like a curtain on a sinister stage. One by one, the gang peeled around the bend, leather jackets flapping, faces obscured by helmets but eyes glinting like wolves. Their leader, a burly man named Spike, wore an insidious grin, showing off rows of teeth that seemed to glisten in the fading light. Spike called out, his voice a throaty bark cutting through the stillness. "Got any hay to spare?" Toby's fingers tightened around the fence rail, splinters digging into his palm. He stepped off the fence, straightening his back, channeling thoughts of his ancestors who had tilled this land long before him. "This land is mine." His voice betrayed a tremor, but he stood firm like the oaks that dotted the landscape. Laughter erupted among the gang. "What'd he say?" Spike spat back, his tone dripping with disdain. Moments went by, stretched and brittle. The chill in the air thickened as the gang closed in. This wasn't just a small act of rebellion. It was the beginning of an invasion, a takeover of his home, his life, his very essence. But Toby wasn't just any farmer. He was the embodiment of resilience. Raised by a father who taught him how to cultivate the land and a mother who instilled the belief that honor meant everything, he wouldn't back down. He turned to his barn, a sturdy structure filled with years of sweat, perseverance, and love. In that moment, every piece of farm equipment transformed into part of his strategic defense. With a determination that surprised even himself, Toby dashed toward the barn, his boots thumping against the ground, a drumming heart echoing in his ears. The gang's jeering faded for a heartbeat. They were unsure of what he was up to. They watched as Toby emerged, brandishing a rusted pitchfork as if it were Excalibur. He shouted, his voice more solid now, cutting through the murmur of disbelief. The leader's laughter rang out like thunder, but Toby saw fury creep into their eyes. They weren't used to this resistance, not from someone they deemed weak. With their bravado evaporating, they circled him, the gang fanning out like wolves stalking prey. In an unexpected move, one of the gang members lunged at Toby, attempting to wrestle the pitchfork from his hands. But with his feet anchored firmly in the dirt, he twisted, planting the pitchfork into the ground. "This is my land." He roared, adrenaline pumping. Now panic shrouded Spike's demeanor. He ordered, his voice now laced with an edge of desperation. A surge of energy propelled the gang forward, a tidal wave of defiance and violence crashing against Toby's resolve. Yet he remained steadfast, anchored by generations of faith in this land. Just as the first fist swung toward him, the clouds above shifted, casting a shadow as if the universe itself was weighing in. Toby ducked, narrowly escaping the blow, his heart thundering in his chest. He sidestepped, offering a spontaneous kick toward the gang member's knee, gaining leverage over the rising chaos around him. He wasn't just fighting for himself. Years of blood, sweat, and tears spent nurturing the earth surged through him. "This farm means family," he shouted, rallying his spirit like a war cry. Now it was more than just physical struggle. It ignited something deeper, an invisible thread connecting Toby to those who had come before him. Distant memories of his father, wisdom etched in the lines of his face, echoed in his mind. "Stand tall, Toby." The fight wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone in Oak Hollow. Toby could see the defiance murmuring through the crowd, familiar faces peeping from behind barn doors, neighbors driven by the shared knowing that unity could dismantle chaos. Suddenly, a whistle, a sharp sound, not from the gang but from the horizon. It was old Henry, the narrow-eyed mechanic from down the road. He'd come riding on his rickety tractor, a stalwart beacon of support, armed with a hammer in hand. Behind him trailed other townsfolk, the baker, the teacher, even Mrs. Johnson, the school's lunch lady, all coming to rally behind their farmer. They were all fueled by something primal, a visceral need to protect what little serenity the world had left. Spike, now visibly shaken, felt the wind shift against his back and something inside him cracked. He yelled, swinging a fist weakly, but he was met with the unwavering strength of a united front and he faltered. Toby stood at the forefront, fierce and unyielding. He shouted, a fire igniting in his belly. "You don't know who we are." The ground beneath them vibrated with purpose. The gang's bravado had withered, and in mere moments, panic replaced arrogance. With a final desperate glance, they turned their bikes around. The engines roared to life, a cacophony of retreat echoed against the land they'd hoped to conquer. As the dust settled, silence enveloped Oak Hollow Farm. It was a quiet kind of victory, the kind that seeps deep into the bones. But in the hearts of the townsfolk, jubilation began to swell. Old Henry approached Toby first, patting his back. "You held your ground, son." His voice trembled slightly, reverberating with genuine pride. One by one, neighbors stepped forward, each offering their support. They spoke of resilience, of community, of protecting what's sacred. Toby felt a warmth spread within him, something that reached far beyond the spires of worry that had clawed at his heart moments ago. But it wasn't just relief, it was hope. Hope that their small community could face off against any threat. In that moment, the lives of everyone present intertwined, bound not only by their defiance against the motor gang but also by a shared spirit of determination. As twilight draped its tender blanket over Oak Hollow, Toby stood with his newfound family now stronger than ever, and the stars began to twinkle overhead. He could hear the whispers of the past guiding him, urging him on. The farm was more than a piece of land. It was a promise, a legacy etched in time. And for anyone who dared to challenge that promise, they would now know that standing tall unites far more than attempting to divide. And as the sun set, bidding farewell to another day, Oak Hollow stood proud, unwavering, and theirs forever. The evening sky was painted a deep orange, darkness creeping in like a thief. Toby, the farmer, wiped his brow and leaned back against the wooden fence that divided his small patch of paradise from the dusty road. He savored the moment, the calm, the quietall of it was charged with an electric potential. This was his land, his legacy, nurtured by generations before him. But then, like thunder rolling across the plains, the sound erupted from the distance, guttural and aggressive. The roar of motorcycle engines pierced the tranquil air, shattering it into pieces. Toby's heart raced as a truckload of leather-clad figures came into view, a swarm of bikes and bravados storming down the dirt road, dust swirling around them like a dark cloud. The motor gang. They had terrorized neighboring farms, their laughter mixing with the revs of their engines, and now it was time for Toby to deal with them. The gang leader, a hulking figure called Spike, shouted as they came to a halt, tires grinding against the gravel. Spike's face was framed with wild hair, his mouth twisted in a sinister grin that sent chills down Toby's spine. Toby stood tall, his hands glued to the rail of the fence, his resolve hardening. He shouted, his voice stronger than he felt, but inside a storm raged and doubt crept in. Could he really defend his land? Would these bullies back down? The gang erupted in laughter, the sound echoing like a dark omen. "What are you going to do, farmer?" Spike jeered, swaggering off his bike, his minions watching hungrily, anticipation hanging in the air. This wasn't just about land, it was a battle for dignity. Each mocking laugh felt like a slap against Toby's chest, igniting a burning fury deep within him. This land had been his family's for generations. It whispered stories of love, loss, and an unwavering faith in hard work. He couldn't let these thugs dismantle that legacy. Toby shouted, stepping off the fence, the ground beneath him as solid as the will coursing through his veins. Spike sneered, taking a step closer, a challenge written all over his face. "Then show us what you've got, dirt farmer." The air thickened with tension, every heartbeat echoing like a distant drum. Toby needed to act quickly. He turned and sprinted toward the barn, adrenaline switching his fear into something sharp and fierce. He felt the weight of the pitchfork under his fingers as he grabbed it, feeling its cold, hard familiarity. He dashed back out, brandishing the pitchfork like a spear. "You want to fight?" he yelled, his voice steady now, a flicker of electricity igniting the air around him. The gang paused, surprise etched onto their faces. Spike laughed again, but this time it was fragile, cracking at the edges. Toby's grip tightened around the pitchfork. "When you mess with my land." The moment teetered like a pendulum, swinging between courage and chaos. Like a pack of hyenas sensing weakness, the gang moved as one, circling him, eyeing him as prey. But Toby stood firm, feeling each breath fill his lungs with clarity and strength. They lunged, all at once rushing toward him like a storm. Toby ducked, evading the first attack, his pitchfork catching the sunlight as he swung it. He struck one of them with a crack that echoed across the now frenzied field. For a brief moment, the world shrank down to just him and them, a whirlpool of energy, sweat, and fear. He could hear his own heartbeat thrumming in his ears like a battle drum. The next gang member charged at him, but Toby sidestepped, using the momentum to flip the pitchfork, driving its prongs into the ground. Survival instincts kicked in, and with rehearsed motions honed over years of wrestling stubborn cattle and taming the land, he spun around and kicked hard, sending another thug sprawling. But the numbers were against him. The gang regrouped, their faces twisted in rage, and they surged forward, attacking en masse. The powerful aura protecting Toby extinguished momentarily. He'd momentarily gained the edge, but it was slipping away. Just as they closed in, a loud horn blared, sending shockwaves through the charged atmosphere. It was Clara, the town mechanic, barreling down the road in her old truck, a determined look etched across her face. She had seen the confrontation unfold and would not stand by. She shouted, brandishing a wrench from the toolbox in her truck. The gang hesitated, momentarily caught off guard. And that's when others began to draw near one by one. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Old Henry with his pitchfork, the bakery's owner Mia cradling fresh loaves like armor. Even Mrs. Johnson rolled up in her ancient sedan, the faint scent of her famous chocolate chip cookies wafting out as she called through the window. "Stand tall, Toby." Inspired by their courage, Toby's heart soared. He yelled, turning back to the gang. "This is what fighting for something means." Spike's bravado began to unravel, his bravado melting like ice under the sun. He glanced at his gang, their confidence dwindling under the gaze of the growing crowd before them. "What's this?" He snickered, but the air around him was tightening, pulling away his bravado like a mask, and he finally recognized the threat before him. Without warning, Clara flung the wrench and it clanked against a bike. The noise split the air like the unmistakable rupture of a balloon. Panic spread through the gang, and they skittered back like cockroaches when the light shines upon them. Toby spat back, adrenaline lighting up the fierce resolve in him. The atmosphere shifted, unity blooming like a flower in the spring. Friends emerged from the shadows, people affected by the gang's reign of terror, radiant with strength. Toby felt their support surge through him like a tether anchoring him to the ground. "You need to leave now," he declared, his voice loud and cutting, echoing through the golden fields that held their dreams and aspirations. In that moment, the motor gang got a taste of something they had never experienced: fear, not just of confrontation, but of an awakened community. They were outnumbered, and those brimming hearts standing together were far stronger than any menace they could muster. Spike looked around, desperation clouding his judgment. He barked, but his bravado crumbled under the weight of their unity. "Go on then," Toby called back, his voice steady but fierce. With that, the gang finally retreated, bikes kicking up clouds of dust as they sped away, their retreat revealing the strength found in solidarity. The air shifted again, a weight lifting as the gang's raucous laughter faded into silence. The neighbors erupted into cheers, relief pouring forth like rain after a long drought. They were victorious, united in a way that none had expected, obstacles broken down like barriers shattered. Toby turned, a broad grin stretching across his face as he surveyed his neighbors, newfound pride welling in his chest. This land is ours. In moments, arms were around each other, shoulders clipped together, the sense of family forged anew against the odds. There was laughter, celebration, and even a few tears as the weight of the confrontation began to settle. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm embrace over the land, Toby felt a lightness in his heart, not just from their victory against the gang, but from the realization that this wasn't merely about fighting back. It was a call to unify against those who sought to disrupt their lives. The farm wasn't just a piece of land where corn and wheat grew. It was the heartbeat of the community, a legacy intertwined with those who cherished it. And they would continue to fight, not just for Toby, but for every person who called Oak Hollow home, a symbol of resilience against any storm that threatened to overshadow their light. As the stars twinkled into existence, Toby looked around at the faces he loved. Joy wrapped around them as they shared stories, laughter echoing through the fields. In those moments, Toby realized it wasn't just a battle he had fought. Together, they had forged an indomitable spirit that would last for generations, a guardian of their dreams, a barrier against chaos. They were farmers and friends, linked by a fierce dedication to protect their own. And as night enveloped them, the whispers of the past danced through the air, reminding them that no one stands alone. The sun dipped low on Oak Hollow Farm, casting a gentle golden hue across the fields. The wind whispered through the crops, creating a soft rustling sound that seemed to sing the melodies of a day well spent. Toby, the farmer, rested his hands on the wooden fence, watching as the last rays of light painted the horizon. Little did he know, the piece he felt would soon be ripped apart. In the distance, a deep rumble broke the calm. The sound grew louder and it was unmistakable, a line of motorcycles like vultures circling above. Toby's heart sank as he recognized the rowdy group. The motor gang was infamous in these parts, known for their brute force and intimidation tactics. They had targeted farms before, leaving destruction in their wake. Just keep your head down and hope they pass by, Toby thought, but he could feel the weight of impending confrontation hanging in the air. He leaned closer to the fence, squinting into the twilight as the gang roared closer. It was too late to run or hide. The lead biker, Spike, swung off his motorcycle, his leather jacket glinting in the fading light. He was a mountain of a man, tattoos snaking up his arms, each mark a testament to his rebellious nature. He bellowed, a smirk tugging at his lips. Toby's grip tightened on the fence railing. He stepped back, shoulders squared, ready to confront this unwelcome intrusion. He called out, his voice louder than he felt. Spike laughed, and the sound rolled through the air like thunder. "We want to see what you've got." The gang laughed, their voices mocking, their eyes gleaming with something dark. Toby's heart raced. He could feel the heat rising in his chest, a mixture of fear and anger coursing through him. He pictured his father working the fields, his grandfather before him, men who had fought for this land, whose blood and sweat had nourished the soil. Toby refused to let someone take that away from him. He shouted, the words roaring like a lion escaping his lips. It felt good to stand firm, even as uncertainty gripped his gut. Spike's face twisted into a sneer. "This is not your land after tonight." He gestured to his gang and they moved closer, circling like wolves around a lone sheep. Every instinct told Toby to run, but something deeper settled within him, a sense of injustice. "I will fight for what's mine," he said, voice steady. This was his home, the earth beneath his feet a part of him. In a flash, the gang lunged, a tidal wave of chaos and aggression. Toby barely had time to react, but he quickly grabbed a nearby pitchfork against the wooden fence. The weight felt reassuring in his hands. He aimed the sharp prongs toward the oncoming threat. Just then, a deafening sound erupted from behind the thumping of a truck engine. Clara, the fierce mechanic from town, had seen the commotion. She barreled down the dirt road, her old pickup veering off the path, slipping to a stop next to Toby. She yelled, wielding a wrench with defiance. The gang paused, surprise flickering across their faces. They hadn't expected anyone else to stand with him. Just as quickly, old Henry and a few farmhands emerged from the nearby fields, pitchforks, shovels, and implements in hand, ready to protect their home. Henry's voice thundered, a testament to countless seasons spent nurturing the land together. The tide began to shift. Toby felt an electric thrill as neighbors rallied behind him, their combined strength an impenetrable wall. The motor gang looked uneasy now, realizing they were vastly outnumbered. Their bravado, once fierce, diminished as uncertainty clouded their judgment. Spike, who had always thrived on intimidation, began to falter. He glanced around, assessing the situation. "All right." He barked, but there was an edge of panic creeping into his tone. The gang surged forward, but rather than retreating, Toby lunged forward. He swung the pitchfork, a flash of steel catching the light, striking the first biker who dared to charge. The sharp clang of metal against leather echoed as the biker stumbled back, shock written on his face. Clara shouted. Her voice radiated like a beacon, igniting the crowd of onlookers. The neighbors jumped into action, charging forward, armed with whatever they could find: Drake's hose and even a garden gnome. With each strike, the gang's confidence faltered. The community had turned into a whirlwind of resistance, united in purpose. Toby felt the pulse of unity pumping through the group, their shared determination blossoming, stronger than any fear the gang had ever inspired. Through the chaos, moments of clarity emerged. Old friendships, neighbors coming together as they had many times before, like fireflies igniting in the darkness. This battle wasn't just a fight against the gang. It was a declaration, a reclamation of their lives. Spike fought furiously, turning to his gang for assistance. "Don't let them push us around. We're the motor gang." But the bravado was weakening. His voice became more frantic, echoes of desperation lurking at the edges. Suddenly, amidst the whirlwind of pitched battles, a sharp noise sliced through a wrench clanking against the metal of a motorcycle as Clara managed to strike one of the gang members. They growled, eyes now darting across the field, fearing the growing uprising around them. Toby found his focus as he intercepted another gang member, his heart pounding, fueled by the support behind him. Each clash rang through the air, a real-life soundtrack of a struggle not fought in vain. Together, they were a force, a testament to the resilience of community. Just as doubt threatened to creep back in, a familiar figure emerged in the distance: Mrs. Johnson, the local school lunch lady, pulling up in her ancient sedan. Her car sputtered to a stop, and when she stepped out, she held a thermos filled with her famously strong coffee. She called, her voice brimming with laughter. The absurdity of the situation broke through the tension and drew laughter from the community. They were all there, not just as neighbors, but as a family united. The motor gang was faced with something they hadn't anticipated: a community rebelling against their presence, fueled by a determination that ran deeper than fear. Clara yelled again, and every heart surged in unison. Panic spread among the gang. Spike's eyes shifted, and suddenly the once threatening laughter shrank into hesitant murmurs. He bellowed, retreating into a haze of bikes and dust. The gang turned tail, engines roaring, speeding off into the encroaching night. The sounds of their engines faded into silence, leaving a palpable stillness behind. The community stood together, a flood of emotions washing over them: relief, triumph, and the shared energy of victory. Toby turned to his neighbors, faces illuminated by the same sunset that had graced the farm only hours before. He shouted, exhilaration lighting his eyes. Cheers echoed, laughter blossoming like wildflowers in the fields. It was more than just a victory over the motor gang. It was a powerful reminder of what they had built together, a place where community triumphs over chaos. As dusk crept over Oak Hollow, the stars began to twinkle, shining brightly above the farm that still stood strong, a legacy untouched by the day's aggression. The community gathered around, swapping stories of courage, shared experiences that would turn into treasured memories. For Toby, standing shoulder to shoulder with his neighbors, he felt an overwhelming sense of purpose, the kind that burned deep within the soul. Each of them had come forward in the face of adversity, unwilling to let outsiders dictate their lives. In the fading light, they began to clean up the remnants of the confrontation: a fallen pitchfork here, a discarded wrench there. But more importantly, they began to rebuild the bonds that made their community unshakable. As night settled in, Toby leaned against the fence once more, gazing out at the field stretching into darkness. But this time, the light of community shone brighter than ever. They had fought back, not just for the land but for each other. Together, they would continue to protect their home, because in Oak Hollow, they had learned a powerful truth: true strength lies in standing together. And with that, as the moon rose high above them, Toby felt a surge of hope. Tomorrow would come as it always did, but now they faced it not just as farmers, but as defenders of their legacy, tied by the roots of unwavering trust and determination. The sky had just begun to darken when the sound sliced through the peaceful evening air, a rumbling roar deep and unsettling. Toby, a farmer whose hands told stories of hard labor, stood by his fields, gazing at the horizon. The sun cast its final golden rays, but now shadows danced ominously in the distance. As he squinted to see what was coming, a familiar chill ran down his spine. Motorcycles. The dreaded motor gang was approaching, and anxiety twisted in the pit of his stomach like a coiled snake. They had terrorized farms nearby, known for intimidation and violence, but Toby had hoped they would steer clear of his home. But hope was fleeting. The gang rolled into view, a line of leather jackets and revving engines. Spike, the gang leader, a mountain of a man, led the pack. He stood tall, his presence larger than life, a predator ready to pounce. As they pulled up to the gate, Toby could see the malicious glee in their eyes. They thought this was going to be easy. "Look what we have here," Spike shouted, his voice booming across the field like rolling thunder. A little farmer all alone. Toby forced himself to stand tall, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. He managed to shout back. Each word was an anchor, fighting against the tide of fear swirling around him. The gang erupted into laughter. It echoed through the fields like a curse, drowning out the sound of the wind. Spike scoffed. "You think you can keep it? Look at you." As he spoke, the gang members revved their engines, creating a deafening symphony of chaos. They relished in his fear, circling closer as Toby's pulse quickened. Each rev of their motors sent shockwaves of dread through his veins. Toby glanced back toward his barn, the place where he poured his heart and soul, even on the toughest days. He couldn't let them take it from him. This was his legacy, his life. He thought of his father, etched in his memory with every sweaty summer day spent in the fields, every moment filled with love and labor. He roared, anger cutting through his fear like a knife. With every ounce of courage, he stood firm, feeling the weight of generations behind him. If he showed weakness now, they would break him. Then, as if sensing his defiance, Spike took a menacing step forward. He challenged. "We'll take your land and have a party right on your front porch." Toby could hear the tension crackle in the air, a storm building. He had grown up around farmhouses, barns, and the unyielding earth. Few things scared him more than this moment. But he also carried the strength of every farmer who had ever fought for their land. Retreat wasn't an option. He took a deep breath and glanced around, searching for something, anything, that could give him an edge. His eyes locked onto the pitchfork propped against the barn wall. It stood there like a beacon of hope. With fierce determination, he dashed toward it. The gang paused momentarily, surprise flashing in their eyes. They hadn't expected him to fight back. Toby gripped the pitchfork, feeling its familiar heft. The cold metal sent a shiver up his arm, but he welcomed it. He turned, holding it out in front of him, the prongs catching the fading light. "You want this land." Something shifted in that moment, a palpable energy. It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, fighting back against the spirit of intimidation. Spike's eyes narrowed, but he laughed again, a sound devoid of genuine amusement. "You really think you can take us on?" With renewed courage, Toby waved the pitchfork, drawing a line in the dirt like an ancient warrior preparing for battle. He shouted, voice steady. In that instant, the gang surged forward, chaos unfolding like a movie reel. Toby's heart raced, the pitchfork raised as he faced the first thug charging at him. Using every bit of strength and skill he'd learned over years of farming, he ducked and pivoted, sweeping the pitchfork sideways, catching the assailant off guard. The man's smirk vanished as he stumbled back, shocked at the resistance. Toby felt the thrill of victory tingle in his veins, but it was just the beginning. The gang regrouped, eyes narrowed, and wild energy flooded the field like a storm. Spike roared, rallying his gang as they charged into the fray. Toby saw the onslaught barreling toward him, adrenaline flooding his body. He didn't back down. With each attack, he swung the pitchfork like a sword, deftly dodging blows, fueled by a fierce determination. He felt every moment engulfed in chaos, the vibrations beneath his feet, the roar of engines, the visceral battle cries. They were here to intimidate him, but he would not be caged. Just as he began to tire, a loud engine revved from behind. Clara, the mechanic from town, appeared in wide-eyed urgency, arriving in her old truck. She yelled, brandishing a wrench, ready to fight alongside him. One of the gang members shouted, but it was too late. Clara bustled forward, swinging the wrench and striking the closest thug with surprising precision, knocking him off balance. The crowd roared with unexpected unity, and Toby felt his hope ignite like a wildfire among them. He rallied a small army of farmers, brandishing pitchforks, shovels, and anything they could find. At that moment, Toby could feel the tide shifting. They were no longer just individuals. They were a force forged together by the love of their land and community. The gang stumbled, gazes reflecting uncertainty, as the neighbors rose against the chaos. The motor gang had never faced such opposition. Spike sputtered, frustration lining his features, but he couldn't afford to show weakness. He bellowed, but doubt crept into his voice as they faced a united front. With every clash, the neighbors fought not just for Toby, but for every drop of sweat, every tear that had nourished the fields. The sound of metal on metal filled the air as pitchforks and tools clashed, fighting back the encroaching darkness that stood at their gate. Toby suddenly found his stride, the chaos becoming a rhythm swinging, parrying, and dodging. He struck again with a quick twist of the pitchfork, knocking another gang member off balance. The sudden exhilaration of triumph surged through him, grounding him in their collective spirit. There was something powerful about the unity of those who chose to stand and fight together. It was a moment that could change the very fabric of their community, a stirring that whispered tales of bravery throughout the ages. Permitted by the courage of his friends, Toby shouted, "You're not coming in here." Every word spoke to the deep-rooted truth that they were more than just farmers. They were protectors, warriors of their heritage, sworn to uphold the dreams they cultivated together. Just then, a sharp clattering sound rang out. Clara, always quick on her feet, launched another wrench, a fluid movement of determination striking Spike's motorcycle. The bike toppled over, crashing to the ground in a cacophony of metal. She called out, her voice ringing defiantly across the battlefield. The Halloween masks of the motor gang seemed to slip as they glanced at their leader, anxiety pooling as tensions reached a breaking point. At that moment, Spike let out a furious roar. But even his threats were losing their bite. The neighborhood had come alive with strength and determination, a fierce heartbeat against the drum of discord they had ignited. The gang retreated, confusion sweeping over them as they scrambled to regroup, uncertainty clawing at their bravado, their eyes searching for the power they had lost. Spike stumbled, retreating on his bike, barking orders that seemed to fade amidst the noise. "Let's go!" He finally screamed, revving the engine, the chaotic symphony fading as the gang retreated down the dirt road, dusk clouding behind them. With their backs turned, the evening breeze carried a triumphant energy through the air as their laughter erupted into a collective roar. Toby stood at the center of it all, a wave of relief crashing over him. They had fought back. The power of community had triumphed over fear. "Together, we're stronger," Clara announced, wiping sweat from her brow but grinning. Cheers erupted from the crowd, their voices mixing in jubilant harmony. Each person shared stories of bravery, bonds that deepened on that battlefield. They gathered around Toby now, celebrating their victory, his heart swelling with gratitude and pride. As dusk settled over the farm, the stars began to twinkle above them, watching over a community that had stood their ground. Oak Hollow wasn't just land. It was a tapestry woven from stories, resilience, and unwavering love. "You know," Toby said, smiling at the faces lit by the fading light, "we should throw a barn party." Laughter rang out again, the sound filling the night air like music. Together, they moved toward the barn, joyful chatter echoing through the fields, solidifying the bonds they had forged in battle. As they celebrated under the starry sky, one thing rang true. No matter the challenges ahead, they had proven that in unity they found strength. In their hearts burned a flame that no gang could extinguish, a flame that would light the path for generations to come. And as the night deepened, they realized that fighting back wasn't just about protecting the land. It was about the spirit of community that could never be taken away. The sun hung low in the sky, a fiery orange glow casting long shadows over Oak Hollow Farm. Toby, the farmer, wiped the sweat from his brow as he surveyed his land, his heart filled with a fierce sense of pride. This was more than just a piece of earth. It was a legacy handed down from his ancestors, a sanctuary where he had poured his sweat and dreams into the soil. But then, on that seemingly tranquil evening, the air crackled with tension as the unmistakable sound broke through the serenity, a rumbling, throaty roar of motorcycle engines. Toby's stomach dropped. He recognized that sound all too well. The motor gang was in town. They rolled up like a dark cloud, a pack of outlaws on gleaming bikes, leather jackets billowing like storm clouds. Toby's heart raced as Spike, the gang leader, an imposing figure with a wild mane of hair and a sneer that could cut glass, swung off his bike and strolled toward Toby with an arrogant swagger. The air thickened with looming danger, the kind that sends chills crawling down your spine. Spike's voice boomed as he approached, bursting with mockery. "Heard you've got a fine piece of land here." Each word dripped with venom, and the laughter from the gang was a chorus of shadows dancing around him. "You think we want to share this place?" Toby gripped the wooden fence, knuckles turning white as fear and anger battled within him. This was his land, his family's home for generations. He couldn't let them intimidate him. He shouted, each word a defiant roar in the face of their chaos. Spike halted and let out a sharp laugh, a sound that rattled through the fields. "You, a lone farmer." He surveyed his gang with a wicked grin, as if beckoning them to join the fun. The gang's laughter roared like thunder, amplifying the tension. But Toby felt something welling inside him, something bold. Memories flooded back to him. His father, with dirt on his hands and wisdom in his heart, had always said, "Stand your ground, son." He wasn't going to back down, not now. In a moment of fierce clarity, Toby's eyes darted toward the barn, where his grandfather's old pitchfork leaned against the wall. Just then, the roar of laughter from the gang echoed ominously in his ears. He turned sharply, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through his veins. "Stick your ground, Toby," he whispered to himself, and bolted toward the barn, heart pounding. The gang's laughter faded momentarily as confusion swept over them at his sudden movement. With every stride, Toby felt the weight of history, the countless days spent working the land, nurturing the crops and battling against the elements. This land had been a sanctuary for hope, and he wouldn't let it slip through his fingers. He grabbed the pitchfork, its metallic sheen gleaming defiantly in the sunlight. The weight felt familiar, grounding him, fighting back the creeping anxiety. He turned to face the gang again, the pitchfork raised in front of him like a sword. "You want this land?" The gang paused, a flicker of surprise cutting through their bravado. Here was a simple farmer ready to defend everything he held dear, and in that moment Toby felt a swell of power. "You think intimidation works here?" Spike's expression shifted. He had anticipated fear, a cowering farmer begging for mercy, not this figure of defiance standing tall, heart racing like the steeds of the wind. Well, a little bravery." He stepped back, gesturing the gang to circle around Toby, a predatory instinct glimmering in his eyes. But rather than diminish, Toby's courage ignited into unwavering fury. The threatening circle encroached closer, heartbeats surging in tandem with adrenaline. Just as the gang closed in, the unmistakable thud of an engine broke through the chaos. A beat-up old truck rumbled down the dirt road. Spike snarled, his plan thwarted momentarily as Clara, the mechanic from town, leaped out of her truck brandishing a wrench, eyes ablaze with determination. "What's happening here?" The gang turned, surprise washing over their faces, and for the first time, a crack appeared in their confidence. Clara charged, swinging the wrench with a fierce determination that lit a fire within Toby's heart. Then, like a dam bursting, others began to appear. Old Henry, the farmer from down the road, approaching with his own pitchfork, followed by several neighbors who had heard the ruckus and the cries for support. Henry shouted, voice booming like thunder, and a unified roar erupted from the crowd gathered behind Toby. In moments, Toby was no longer alone. This wasn't just about one farmer anymore. It was a collective stand for their homes, their families, and their shared community. The motor gang realized they had underestimated the spirit of Oak Hollow. Toby yelled, strength swelling in his chest. They weren't just fighting for a land. They were protecting each other, standing against the tide of violence and chaos with arms locked together. The gang surged forward, chaos erupting like a wild storm, but Toby didn't back down. He waved his pitchfork, ready for the onslaught. The first thug lunged, and with a swift motion, Toby sidestepped, using the farm skills honed over years to his advantage. He jabbed the pitchfork forward, striking true as the gang member stumbled back. The world around him blurred into a flurry of movement, fear mingling with adrenaline as he fought, feeling powerful in the unity that surrounded him. Clara swung her wrench with ferocity, striking back at another attacker, while Henry and the others joined in, each strike echoing with purpose. This wasn't just a skirmish. It was a testament, a defining moment for their community, a fight born out of resilience and defiance. The shouts and clangs of metal reverberated through the air, igniting a spark of hope in the hearts of all who stood together. Toby felt the rhythm of their defense, a collective heartbeat rising against their attackers. He roared, pushing back against the tide. The sudden realization washed over him. They weren't just farmers. They were guardians of a legacy that bound them together. Spike, fueled by anger and desperation, shouted orders, but the gang was faltering. One by one, their confidence drained, the overwhelming unity of the farmers pressing against them. It wasn't just fear now, it was defeat creeping in like the darkness of night. With every clash, Toby stood stronger, the pitchfork in his hand steadied by the weight of his ancestors. He struck again, the prongs catching the light as he aimed for another frail attack. He shouted, rallying his friends around him. Just as it seemed the tide had turned, a loud crash echoed through the battlefield. Clara had swung her wrench one last time, sending the gang's motorcycle toppling over, the noise amplifying the atmosphere of victory around them. Spike yelled now, realizing they were losing ground. The gang, once overwhelming, was being pushed back, fear creeping into their laughter as they scrambled for their bikes. The farmers pressed on, the energy pulsing like a wild anthem, voices united. They were fighting not just for land, but for a space where they all belonged, where they could cultivate dreams and build lives free from fear. Get out of here, Toby shouted, raising the pitchfork triumphantly, strength surging as he led the charge. The gang turned and fled down the dirt road, engines roaring in chaos as they sped away into the distance. As the dust settled, the silence enveloped the field, broken only by the distant sound of fading engines. Both relief and exhilaration washed over the farmers as they gathered together, laughter bubbling up from within. Toby dropped to his knees for a moment, the adrenaline fading as exhaustion swept over him. Around him, voices rose in celebration, neighbors clasping hands and offering praise for their triumph. Clara exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. Toby stood now, feeling swirling like a tempest in his chest. "This isn't just my land," he said, voice steady and strong. "It's our land." The community erupted in cheers, hearts swelling with pride and camaraderie. In that moment, under the glow of the evening sky, they all understood the power of unity. They had battled not just a gang, but also fear itself. Stories spilled forth, and laughter intertwined with a sense of belonging. They shared their moments-old Henry reminiscing about the trouble they had seen together, Clara recounting when she first set foot in town and felt the warmth of acceptance. As twilight wrapped around them, Toby surveyed his farm, knowing that they had not just fought off an invasion, they had fortified their bonds, their friendships. Oak Hollow was more than just an area on a map. It was a home forged by sweat, love, and collective resilience. The stars began to emerge, casting a shimmering curtain upon the gathering, as if the universe itself had smiled down upon them in approval. Laughter echoed through the fields, an anthem of victory, an affirmation of what it meant to belong. And as the night deepened, Toby felt hope blossom in the air, a defiant promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would rise together, bound by the land they cherished and the community they had forged in the fires of conflict. The spirit of Oak Hollow remained, unyielding and vibrant, forever engraved in the hearts of those who called it home. What began as a threat had morphed into a celebration of bravery and unity, a beautiful tapestry of shared stories and dreams, carved into the heart of a farmer and his community. And that evening, they all learned that true strength is found in standing together. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a fiery orange glow over the quiet fields of Oak Hollow Farm. Toby, a weathered farmer with hands hardened by years of labor, stood leaning against the fence, listening to the distant sounds of the land. The rhythmic hum of crickets filled the air, and the sweet scent of earth and growing things wrapped around him like an old friend. But that tranquility was shattered by an unmistakable roar, a deep rumble that sent chills shooting down his spine. Motorcycles. The unmistakable sound was growing louder, and Toby felt a knot tighten in his stomach. The motor gang known for their chaos and intimidation were approaching. It was something no farmer ever wanted to face. He squinted into the distance, dread thickening in the air as the gang rolled into view. Spike, the gang leader, was a mountain of a man, his leather jacket gleaming in the late afternoon sun. He swaggered like a predator, flanked by his unruly pack, whose laughter echoed eerily against the backdrop of the peaceful fields. Spike bellowed, his voice dripping with mockery as they came to a halt. "Nice little piece of land you've got here." Toby straightened, unwilling to back down. The land had been in his family for generations. It meant everything to him. He shot back, his voice stronger than he felt. Inside, fear twisted like a coiled snake, but he anchored himself in the fierce pride of his heritage. The gang erupted in laughter, the sound crashing against the stillness of the farm like a storm. "What's this?" Spike jeered, stepping closer. The bravado in his eyes sparked a fire of anger within Toby. Toby declared, his heart pounding in his chest. He could see the skepticism on the faces of the gang members, but he wouldn't let that deter him. Spike's sneer only widened. "You think you can take us on?" He gestured to his gang, circling Toby like wolves surrounding prey. Just like that, the tension thickened in the air. Toby felt the weight of their intimidation pressing down on him, but he dug his heels in. With determination burning in his chest, he glanced towards the barn where he had spent countless hours, pouring his heart into every nail and beam. Memories flooded his mind. His father working the fields, warnings to stand tall, to never let anyone take what was rightfully theirs. This was his legacy, and he wouldn't let anyone tarnish it. In the chaos unfolding around him, Toby spotted his pitchfork propped against the barn wall. It was a simple tool, but it felt like a sword at that moment, his weapon in this fight. He dashed toward it, heart racing, and gripped the wooden handle, the weight of it grounding him, anchoring his courage. The gang paused momentarily, surprise dancing in their eyes as he returned, pitchfork held high. "You want my land?" Laughter erupted again, but this time it was tinged with uncertainty. Toby could feel the shift in energy, a pulse of fear mingling with their bravado. He challenged, stepping forward. Determination surged through him as the gang regained their composure and moved closer, cowering under the weight of their own arrogance. Spike charged forward, fists ready, but as he lunged, Toby sidestepped, the pitchfork swiping through the air with a sharp whoosh. He narrowly evaded the first attack, a heartbeat away from disaster. The fight had begun, chaos erupting as Spike's gang lunged in from all directions. Toby pivoted, deflecting a blow and striking back with the pitchfork, adrenaline fueling his every move. The first thug stumbled back, shock etched on his face, and for a brief moment Toby felt the rush of victory. Just then, the rumble of an engine broke through the frenzy. Clara, the mechanic from town, came barreling down the dirt road in her old pickup truck, a fierce look of determination etched on her face. She shouted, swinging a wrench like a warrior brandishing a sword. Toby's heart swelled with hope. He yelled back, instantly reassured by her presence. Clara leaped out of the truck, wrench in hand, ready to join the fight. Behind Clara, Old Henry and a few other farmers emerged from the fields, armed with pitchforks and shovels, faces set with grim resolve. Henry bellowed, his presence a beacon of strength. Suddenly, Toby realized they were not just fighting for himself, they were fighting for all of them. The unity that blossomed among them was palpable, and he felt an overwhelming surge of strength. This is our land. As the gang hesitated, confusion creeping in, Toby stepped forward, brandishing the pitchfork. He thrust forward, fueled by a sense of justice that transcended his own fears. The spirit of community awakened something deep within him, a fire igniting that pushed him past the boundaries of intimidation. The fight expanded beyond him. It transformed into a tide of resistance that swept through the farmers, empowering them all. Spike's bravado began to wane, frustration bubbling under the surface as he tried to rally his gang. They charged forward again, each maniacal, but this time, the farmers stood their ground. Toby felt the pulse of unity swelling inside him, every swing, every dodge, a testament to their shared determination. Spike roared, but even his words felt hollow now, their power slipping through his fingers as the farmers fought back. Clara swung the wrench, catching another thug off guard, while Henry rallied everyone with shouts of encouragement. The air rang with clashing metal and sharp cries. Toby could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, a symphony of fear and bravery mingling beautifully as they fought against the tide of chaos. They were no longer just individual farmers up against a gang. They had morphed into a collective force, resilient in their stand. Each thrust of the pitchfork echoed with shared history and strength, the visceral energy of the land fueling their fight. The field was once a serene backdrop, but had now transformed into a battleground where hope, determination, and friendship collided against fear and tyranny. As the battle raged on, the stakes grew ever higher, with each farmer finding renewed strength in their solidarity. Together, they pressed forward, determined not just to defend Toby's farm, but to stake a claim on their right to grow, to thrive, and to belong. Just then, Toby locked eyes with Spike across the fray. The gang leader was desperate now, rage painted across his face. He spat, but there was a crack in his confidence, a shifting doubt that he couldn't quite mask. With that moment of recognition, the air seemingly froze, a stillness wrapping around them. Finally, Toby yelled, "You may think you're tough, but you don't know who we are." The gang faltered, uncertainty creeping in as Spike's bravado began to crumble. Without warning, Clara swung her wrench again and Spike stumbled, losing his grip on the chaos he once ruled. The last shreds of certainty faded from the gang, and they turned to retreat, scrambling back to their motorcycles. "Get out." Toby could feel the strength surging through the farmers as they advanced, a wave of defiance pushing the gang back until they vanished down the dirt road, engines roaring in a chaotic retreat. As the dust settled, disbelief washed over Toby's face. They had done it. Together, they had fended off the motor gang. Every breath he took felt lighter, a mixture of relief and triumph filling the air as cheers erupted from the farmers around him. Clara shouted, her face beaming with joy as she wiped her brow. Henry clapped Toby on the back, laughter bubbling forth. "You fought like a lion, son. We all did." In that moment, the reality of the day washed over Toby like a warm embrace. They were more than just individuals fighting to protect their land. They had transformed into a united front, a family forged in the flames of conflict. The love for their home had ignited something powerful within. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in vibrant hues, they gathered round in the fading light, sharing stories of bravery, strength, and camaraderie. Feelings swelled with gratitude and pride, memories forged in the heat of the battle mingled with whispers of hope for the future. Toby finally exclaimed, the warmth of unity wrapping around them like a blanket. A loud cheer erupted, and as they made their way to the barn, it felt as if the very earth beneath their feet pulsed with life. Laughter and chatter mixed into a jubilant symphony, each step forward marking a promise that they would always stand together, no matter the challenge. As the stars twinkled overhead, Toby felt swelling pride. He was not just a farmer, he was part of something much bigger. Oak Hollow was alive with spirit, resilience, and a warmth that could withstand any storm. That evening, amidst the laughter and stories, Toby knew they had built something lasting. This wasn't just about farm and land. It was about the community they cherished, the family they had forged together, and the unwavering strength that came from unity. And as they celebrated their triumph under the watchful gaze of the stars, Toby smiled, knowing deep down that they had created a legacy, the kind that would endure, standing strong against any threat that dared to encroach on their home. This was their vow, their promise to always fight back. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting Oak Hollow Farm in a vibrant orange glow. Toby leaned against his wooden fence, hands calloused from years of hard work, breathing in the earthy scent of tilled soil. He felt at peace, surrounded by the sounds of crickets and the gentle rustling of leaves. But that peace shattered when a low rumble echoed through the air, growing louder with each second. He squinted into the distance, heart sinking as a line of motorcycles emerged from the dust. The infamous motor gang was rolling in. Their growls pierced the tranquility of the countryside, ripping through the calm like a knife through silk. Toby felt a chill crawl up his spine. He'd heard the tales. These were no ordinary bikers. They were trouble wrapped in leather and arrogance. "Another farm to conquer," he heard one of them shout, laughter rippling through the group. Spike, the gang leader, emerged at the front, a hulking figure with a wild beard and a sneer that promised chaos. He dismounted his bike with the swagger of a king surveying his kingdom. Spike called out, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "Looks like you've got a nice little patch of dirt here." Toby felt his heart race faster, panic mingled with determination. This was his land, a haven inherited from generations before him. He shouted back, trying to draw strength from his voice. Spike laughed, a sound that echoed like thunder. "What are you going to do about it?" His gang gathered closer, circling Toby like wolves preparing for the kill. Fear gripped his chest, but anger surged in, fueling his resolve. He declared, grounding himself in the pride that came from years of hard work. He glanced toward his barn, the place where memories of laughter, sweat, and love echoed in every corner. He wouldn't let these thugs take that away from him. As if guided by instinct, Toby sprinted toward the barn, the distant roar of motorcycle engines fading momentarily. He reached for the pitchfork propped against the wall, the familiar weight of it grounding him. This was his tool, his protector, and at that moment it felt like a symbol of every farmer who had ever stood their ground. He shouted as he brandished the pitchfork, the sun glinting off its metal prongs. The gang faltered for a split second, surprise flashing in their eyes. Spike chuckled, stepping forward again. With his heart thumping, Toby defiantly held the pitchfork like a sword. He planted his feet firmly into the earth, grounding himself against the tide of fear threatening to wash over him. The tension in the air was palpable, a moment suspended in time until Spike's grin faltered. With that, the gang surged forward, like a pack of feral dogs unleashed. The chaos erupted, motorcycles roaring, men shouting. Toby had little time to think, instincts kicked in. He sidestepped the first attacker, swinging his pitchfork with a fierce determination that came from years of hard labor. He struck true, the prongs catching one of the bikers off guard. The man stumbled, shock lighting up his face as he realized the farmer wasn't as helpless as they had anticipated. The adrenaline rushed through Toby, pushing him to strike again. But the numbers were against him. The gang closed in, a tidal wave of aggression, the clang of metal mixing with shouts and laughter. Fear threatened to creep back in, but Toby fought against it, knowing he had to stand his ground for the sake of everything he loved. Just as the chaos tightened around him, a loud horn blared through the night. Clara, the mechanic from town, came barreling down the dirt road in her old pickup truck, her expression fierce. She yelled, leaping out to join the fray. The gang paused momentarily, confusion flickering among them. One of them shot back, but Clara wasn't having any of it. She shouted, swinging a wrench with fierce determination, striking one of the gang members. The crowd watching started to rally, the uprising igniting. Old Henry and neighbors sprang forth from the shadows, armed with pitchforks and shovels, ready to defend their home together. The tide began to shift. Toby felt a rush of hope, realizing he wasn't alone anymore. He yelled, locking eyes with Clara and Henry, their expressions filled with shared determination. They had come together under this unyielding force of community. Spike yelled, feeling this united front pushing back against them. It was as if the farmers had transformed into an unstoppable wall of unity, each terrorized neighbor standing firm against their aggressors. In the clamor, Toby bolstered his resolve. No longer just a farmer, he felt like a protector, like a guardian of everything he held dear. With each swing of his pitchfork, he fought for his home, for his neighbors, family, and generations to come. "You will not take what's ours." The shouts and clashes echoed like a battlefield, each strike of the pitchfork accompanied by the beats of their hearts entwined in purpose. For every blow, there was a rallying cry, a reminder that they were not merely fighting for land, but for the very spirit that bound them together. But the gang wasn't backing down easily. Spike, fueled by rage, tried again to orchestrate the chaos. He shouted, and renewed fervor rushed through the gang as they pushed forward, an onslaught without hesitation. This was now about proving their strength, but the farmers were a barrier they couldn't break through easily. Every advance, the true meaning of solidarity revealed itself, and a fire kindled in Toby's heart. They were not just individuals, they were a collective force, bolstered by the love they had poured into their community. Toby shouted, raising his pitchfork high, a weapon of defiance against the encroaching darkness. It was a struggle of wills now, and as the chaos ebbed and flowed, Toby found himself face to face with Spike again. The tension hummed like a charged wire. Spike spat, eyes wild with fury. Toby replied, his voice steady and confident. "I am a farmer." At that moment, realization crashed over Spike's face. This was not a single farmer before him. It was an entire community rising against him, reclaiming their strength. The realization slowly dawned on the gang too. Fear hung in the air like a heavy fog. Clara swung her wrench again, catching another biker off guard, and suddenly the tide turned more definitively. With renewed energy, Toby led the charge forward, surrounded by his family, friends, and neighbors, pushing the gang back step by step. It felt like a dance, a chaotic yet beautiful ballet of resistance, unity flowing through every strike, every cry. They worked together seamlessly, and for Toby, the world around him faded as he focused on the battle at hand, defending the land that meant everything to him. And then, like a predator finally cornered, Spike let out a furious roar. "This isn't over." With a final glance, they turned to retreat, scrambling to their motorcycles and firing them up in a cacophony of sound that shattered the quiet once again. As they sped away, leaving clouds of dust swirling in the air, a wave of triumph washed over Toby. They had done it. They had stood together against those who sought to destroy their home. The reality of that accomplishment settled in, and he felt tears prick the corners of his eyes. But before the celebration could fully erupt, a sudden metallic crash rang out, a sound that sent a wave of dread rolling through the farmers. They turned toward the barn, heart rates quickening as they saw sparks fly from its roof. Toby shouted, rushing toward the barn, fear gripping his chest. Just as they reached the entrance, the barn doors exploded inward, sending wooden splinters flying in all directions. In the chaos, a massive piece of machinery came hurtling out, a wrecking ball swinging dangerously in their direction, lingering like a looming specter of doom. Toby yelled, feeling the rush of panic surge through his veins. The weight of the moment pressed heavily upon him as the reality of the gang's last-minute retaliation crashed down. Before he could react, the machinery swung closer, threatening to obliterate everything in its path. The night air thickened with tension. This was more than just a battle for a farm. It was a fight for survival. As the dust settled and their breath hitched in their throats, they all braced themselves for the impact of what was to come. The clang of metal rang out like a death knell, the future of Oak Hollow teetering on the edge of an uncertain blade. Would they defeat the darkness that threatened to consume them, or would they be lost to chaos forever? The weight of the moment pressed down on them, poised between past triumph and present terror, and as the debris rained down from the barn above, everything hung in the balance. The battle was far from over, and the darkness lurked just beyond the horizon, ready to rise again.